Do you remember this cozy iron bed? No? What about this rocket? Or this brutalist cafeteria with an interior that only a Soviet torturer could love? That rings a bell, right? That's my focus today. Seriously, how can Plankton fit all this stuff into a rusty little bucket? The guy has a massive room filled with nothing but spatulas. He's got a whole-ass rocket, and given the presence of these spent fuel rods, he also has a nuclear reactor in there, and a lab, and bathrooms, and bedrooms. And he still has enough space left over to run a restaurant, all in a teeny tiny bucket. Normally, we would start with trying to locate it, but for the HQ of a supervillain, the Chum Bucket is horrifyingly easy to find. It's not hidden inside a mountain or anything like that, it's just out there in the open, right across the street from the Krusty Krab. And if you're having any trouble finding it, there is a very big and very helpful sign right at the front. But locating the Chum Bucket is actually the easiest part of this crazy adventure, because as soon as you set your eyes on that building, that's when the madness starts. Just look at this ridiculous fight. This fight was the trigger for me, but the insanity of the Chum Bucket starts long before this. We're not going to go back to the beginning though. We're just going to rewind back a few seconds, specifically to here. Every time we see the Chum Bucket, we always see this huge purple glove sitting on top. And every time I see it, it drives me insane. No, it's not the fact that the purple lightens or darkens in different scenes. It's not even the fact that the glove changes from right-handed to left-handed. The thing that gets my goat is far more fundamental. I just want you to look at this image for a second and see that infuriating detail for yourself. If you noticed that infuriating detail, good. Now we can be angry together. If you haven't noticed it yet, haha, stop smiling. I'm still gonna ruin your day with the next scene. It makes the madness painfully obvious. You see it now, don't you? Seriously, how the hell does it do that? Every time we see the Chum Bucket, that stupid glove is holding up the handle. Sometimes it lifts up the whole bucket and just shakes it around. In Plankton Retires, the glove does it with just a pinky. In Handemonium, we see the full scale of the glove's power when it wrecks the whole town all by itself.
My glove! My big, beautiful, bone-crushing glove!
The problem is, in order to generate power, you need energy. Animals have to eat, and machines have to burn fuel or consume electricity. But how does the glove generate all its power? It's very obvious that it needs a lot of power to hold up the bucket for 13 plus seasons. Now, most of the time, the glove is not holding up the whole bucket because the bucket is sitting at the bottom of the ocean. It has gravity holding it down, but the glove is always holding up the handle. The question is, how? Without the glove to hold it up, the handle would fall and just hang off the side of the bucket because that's exactly what bucket handles do. In fact, we see the handle do exactly that in this scene from Karen's Baby. When the glove lets go, gravity wins and the handle falls to the side. But how on earth does the glove stay up? It's not attached to anything. If there was a guy standing there and holding up the handle with his hand, that would make sense. But the glove is just there on its own, attached to nothing. And here's the kicker. Holding up the handle is actually the easiest and least power-intensive part of the glove's job. The real trick is resisting gravity, buoyancy, tides, and currents. You can't just stand still at one spot in the ocean. You either have the buoyancy of the water pushing you up or gravity pulling you down. The direction you go in depends on whether you're heavier or lighter than water. You also have ocean currents pushing you left and right, round and around. That's why fish usually swim with the current. It uses less energy than swimming against it. So in order to stay in one place, you have to resist all those forces around you. How does the Chum Bucket glove do it? How does it resist sinking? How does it resist being thrown around by waves and tides and currents? How does it resist gravity pulling it to the bottom of the ocean? In order to resist gravity, birds have to flap their wings, helicopters have to rotate their rotors, and rockets have to work their boosters. Even submarines use ballast tanks and compressed air to either adjust or maintain their depth in the water. Resisting ocean currents also requires energy. If ships or submarines want to sail against the current, they have to burn a whole lot of fuel, and most fish don't even bother swimming against the current because it just takes too much energy. But somehow the glove is able to resist all these forces without even moving, and we have no idea how. We don't even know whether it's a living thing or a machine, because sometimes it's portrayed as a sentient creature and other times it's just a lifeless thing. That glove being a living creature is flat out impossible. Living beings need food and friends and all that jazz. Can you imagine standing in one spot holding a bucket for the rest of your life? You can't. It's beyond torture. It's absolute insanity. All living things need to move and play and make babies. They simply can't stay in one place forever unless they're dead. Or they're a tree. But the glove is clearly not a tree, so the possibility of the glove being a living thing is beyond inconceivable. However, the glove exhibits human characteristics by falling in love with a fake female glove created by Plankton and SpongeBob in one episode, Handemonium. But in all other episodes, it's just a mindless machine. Now, the glove being a machine is more conceivable because machines can stay in one place indefinitely. But it's still an incredibly difficult thing to pull off. In order for a machine to stay in one place and keep functioning, it needs fuel, spare parts, oil changes, and a lot of maintenance. And that's just for a machine in a sheltered room. A machine in the open ocean will need even more of that because now you have to worry about rust and sand and sinking and all the ocean currents that are trying to toss it around. So, if the glove is a machine, how exactly does it work? How does it resist sinking? How does it resist waves and currents and curious sharks? How does Plankton afford the fuel and the maintenance? How does he afford anything, really? His restaurant doesn't have any customers, so he never makes any money. The show doesn't answer any of these questions. We just see the glove holding up the bucket. Sometimes it lifts the whole bucket, and other times it fights whoever Plankton wants it to fight. It even digs a hole and buries the chum bucket and Plankton retires. It can walk and fight and float in water without either sinking or popping up to the surface, and we have no idea how. It can also resist waves and currents and tides. It's a total mystery. When the glove goes rogue in Handemonium, Plankton replaces it with a combat boot, and we just have the same problems all over again. But that's just the glove, or the boot. Surely the rest of the chum bucket isn't going to be any more insane, right? Well, the lid is nice. I mean, who could screw something up as simple as putting the lid on a bucket? If you want to know how somebody can screw up a lid, just watch this scene. Did you see it? The glove reaches out into the bucket, takes out the lid from inside the bucket, and then covers the bucket. What in the cartoon logic is that? Surely you've used a bucket at least once in your life, and if not, you have at least used something with a lid. Something like a cup, a Tupperware container, or even a water bottle. They all have one thing in common. They keep the lid outside the container it's supposed to cover, not the inside. The entire point of the lid is that it covers the container, which means no matter what, the lid is always slightly bigger than the container it's supposed to cover. The lid of a bucket cannot fit inside the bucket itself, because if it did, it wouldn't be a lid anymore. Could you imagine how the world would be if the lids of containers were small enough to fit inside the containers they were supposed to cover? Can you imagine the lid of your water bottle falling inside the bottle? How the hell is that supposed to do its job? How does that even work? So what the hell is the chum bucket's lid doing inside the bucket itself? Why wasn't the lid already covering the bucket in the first place? The chum bucket is a building in this universe. That means the lid is the roof. So what on earth is the lid doing inside the bucket? What kind of madman keeps his roof inside his house? I thought we all just put the roof on the top of the house and never bothered it again. Am I crazy, or do any of you guys keep your roof inside the house? Now I know I'm getting overly worked up, so let's just slide off this roof of a bucket lid and enter the chum bucket itself. Surely there is nothing inside that can trigger us. Plankton has a very good reason for not cleaning his dining area.
Do you know when the last time I had a customer was? Well, there he is!
And that's the most unbelievable thing about the chum bucket. How can a restaurant stay open when its food is so awful that it's actually poisonous? The food at the Chum Bucket is so bad that even when Karen pays somebody to eat it in Plankton's regular, the guy refuses to do it.
I can't eat another bite of that slop, and I've already had to go to the doctor. Twice! Oh.
And let's not forget the dead customer from New Leaf, or the puking customers from Chum Bucket Supreme. Nobody wants to eat at the Chum Bucket.
What's that number before 1?
0.
Oh, right. Congratulations.
Plankton never gets any customers, and in the literal 3 or 4 times that he does get customers in the whole series, his chum either leaves them violently ill or peacefully dead. How has he not been investigated for murder? Because even if you poison somebody by accident, you're still on the hook for manslaughter. But Plankton is as free as a pile of rotting fish. How? And one more thing, the dead customer is not the only murder that Plankton is guilty of. He could be responsible for way more numbers. It starts with the chum. Chum is made from bits and pieces of fish, like eyeballs and intestines. The ocean might be a fish-eat-fish world, but Bikini Bottom is a vegetarian town. The fish there don't eat other fish. It's a crime. In Ditchin, Bikini Bottom police accuse Dale of cannibalism and arrest him because he has fish-flavored gummies. Or is it gummy-flavored fish? It's a little confusing, but either way, it's disgusting and illegal.
Is this how you have fun? By eating your own kind?
This guy's going to jail for fish-flavored gummies. But Plankton has fish guts and eyeballs and heads and has never been arrested for it. How does he even get them in the first place? You can't pull out the guts of a fish without killing it. Is Plankton murdering other fish for his chum? Is he a mass murderer who's turning the other fish into cannibals? We don't know. What we do know is that it is not a one-off thing. He didn't come across a pile of dead fish once and then has been selling their guts ever since. In Plankton's old chum, we learn that Plankton's chum goes bad every week like clockwork. So he's been constantly restocking his supply of chum for 13 seasons.
You know, it's remarkable how chum goes bad every week right on time.
Given that he has no customers, it makes no sense for him to keep murdering fish and restocking chum, but he does it anyway. This is also not some deep dark secret. In Krabby Chronicle, it's front page news, but Plankton only gets shut down by the health inspector. There is no arrest and no jail time.
Plankton's chum made of your chums? The Chum Bucket serves your friends in more ways than one?
When it comes out that the stories in the newspaper were all made up, nobody looks into Plankton's chum again, but the grossness of his restaurant remains an open secret in Bikini Bottom. Just watch this exchange from the inside job.
I think the Chum Bucket is the high point of our tour. We're visiting the most disgusting places in Bikini Bottom, and so far, you're number 1.
Plankton is selling fish guts in the open in a town where eating fish is a crime on par with cannibalism, and no one does anything about it. It's treated as a joke, and if you think the show is going to deal with this glaring plot hole, come on. Let's just watch Plankton try and fail to steal the Krabby Patty formula for the 7,000th time. Talking about that formula reminds me of the second room in the Chum Bucket. As you can see, this door is helpfully labeled Kitchen. There are other stickers on the door too. Top secret, stay out, blah blah blah. We're just trying to ignore those signs and go in. We have to see how the chum is made. Whoops. This is not actually the kitchen, it's Plankton's lab. He tricked us with the sign on the door. The lab is yet another room in the Chum Bucket that makes absolutely no sense. This is where Plankton makes his diabolical plans to rule the world. It's where he builds his robots and sends them out to wreck Bikini Bottom. It's also where he tries to keep Karen, but she goes wherever she wants. Sometimes she even kicks him out of his own house. But Karen isn't the problem. The lab itself is. It has a lot of problems. Plankton has built a replicator. He can literally clone people, but he can't figure out how to replicate a burger or even steal the formula. Come on. Then there's the second problem with the lab. How does Plankton afford all his gadgets? He may have the expertise, but building all his world-dominating technology still requires resources like steel and energy and industrial machinery. Where's the money coming from? It's clearly not from the restaurant business because he doesn't sell any of his chum. Then there's this third problem. Why does Plankton even have a lab in the first place? Plankton's lab would have been raided and smashed to pieces by 1,000 FBI agents. Plankton himself would either be licking lollipops in jail or working on a secret weapons program for the government. There is no situation in which he just gets away with it and keeps pulling the same crap. But in Bikini Bottom, he gets to roam the street and cause mayhem day after day with zero consequences. He keeps his shiny lab, his computer wife, and all his other fancy gadgets because it's funny.
Plankton, 1% evil, 99% hot gas.
I think all the people whose property he's wrecked and the fish in his chum would beg to differ, but that's a problem for another day because there's an even bigger problem with Plankton's lab. Plankton himself. If he is so smart that he can make a computer wife and clone people all by himself, why is Plankton wasting his time trying to copy the Krabby Patty? He could just sell his gadgets and become a tech billionaire. Why is he wasting time trying to replicate a burger? Wouldn't it actually be easier for him to just rule the world if he focused on building robots instead of trying to steal the formula for a burger? And even if he cares about the burger so much, if he took the tech route, Plankton could just buy the Krabby Patty formula. If the price was right, there is no way on earth Mr. Krabs would refuse to sell. That guy worships money. But instead of doing any of that, Plankton chooses to stay broke and dedicate his life to stealing the formula while running a failed restaurant on the side. Real genius level thinking there. Bro has a whole lab, but no idea how to actually use it. So let's get the hell out of this lab masquerading as a kitchen and find the real kitchen. Well, in Bottle Burglars, we see that Plankton actually grinds his chum in the lab instead of the kitchen. But there is still an actual kitchen in the Chum Bucket. It's located here, behind the order counter. We don't see much of the kitchen because Plankton has automated the cooking process. The kitchen is the one room in the Chum Bucket that makes a bit of sense. Not a lot, just a bit. After all, Plankton has a grill in his kitchen, and that is beyond ridiculous. I talked about the problems with having a grill underwater in my video on SpongeBob's house. So check it out if you want to hear the full rant, but here's the short version. You can't use a grill underwater. When it gets hot, it heats all the water around it and turns everybody into a seafood boil. And that concludes our partial tour of the Chum Bucket. I'm sorry I couldn't give you the full tour. Plankton has a bunch of other rooms in this bucket, but we only see them once or twice. There's a living room with a TV, a bedroom, a bathroom, a safe room with a rocket, and even a spatula room. We don't know exactly where these rooms are in the bucket because they're mostly one-off rooms that are just used for a single joke before being forgotten. But not all the additional rooms are jokes. There's one room that has a good reason to exist, and it is so sad. That room is the bedroom. It has two beds, one for Plankton and one for Karen. Looking at them fills me with so much sadness. It's the one time I actually feel sorry for Plankton. Bro spent all that time building an AI robot wife and he still sleeps alone. Karen won't let him in her bed, and sometimes she won't even let him in the house. I mean, if you can't make your AI robot wife love you, what else are you gonna do?